friends, I'm Akash, and this is your News of the Week for the week of July 18th to July 24th, 2021. Let's take a look at the headlines for this week's stories. And so we begin with the Tokyo 2020 Olympics opening ceremony, which is finally taking place on July 23rd, 2021. Because it's been over a year after the Olympics was postponed due to COVID-19 in 2020. Now, the next topic that we're going to discuss in this video is the fact that the winner of the 2021 NBA Finals is the Milwaukee Bucks. Congrats to the Bucks on their great win. We'll talk about how they managed to get to this point in just a bit. But first, we'll talk about some other stories here during our headline section, and this includes the fact that the Pegasus spyware has been used for more nefarious purposes than originally planned. It was originally meant to catch criminals. Now it's being used to trace political opponents and opposition leaders and overall dissidents of the state government. Now, the next topic I want to talk about is the fact that due to seismic waves that have been reported on Mars from the NASA's InSight probe, we have managed to figure out what Mars looks like deep inside. So, stay tuned to find out how it looks and how it works. Now, our next story here actually relates to the fact that just a little while, a couple weeks after Microsoft introduced Windows 11 to the world, Microsoft is releasing another operating system. Its cloud-based subscription service, Windows 365. Now, our next story is the fact that famed video game company Valve has introduced the Steam Deck, a portable video gaming console, which is planned to be released in December 2021. People are super hyped for this, and I can't wait. We'll talk about the specs and just how awesome it is in just a bit. But first, the winner of the 2021 Tour de France, the world's most famous and most brutal cycling competition in the world, the winner is two-time champion Slovenian 22-year-old Tadej Pogačar. Congratulations to Pogačar for the win. We'll take a look at how he got to win this championship twice over in just a moment. But first, the IOC International Olympic Committee on July 10th officially voted for Brisbane to host the 2032 Summer Olympics. And finally, our last story for the week before we go into details is that the Cleveland Indians are changing their name. Famed baseball team from Cleveland, and now they are the Cleveland Guardians, starting in the 2022 season. Now, all of these are great stories, so let's take a look at our first one. And so we begin with the Tokyo 2020 Olympics opening ceremony, which took place at July 23rd, just on Friday. But the only interesting thing about this is the fact that this is being taking place in 2021, because after a whole year since it was postponed by the IOC due to COVID-19, the Olympics are finally up to speed as the Olympic ceremony took place on July 23rd. Finally, the Olympics can begin. Now, this right here is some great news, and the Olympic ceremony was absolutely stunning. We had spectacular drone shows, cascading fireworks, a wonderful parade of nations, which is revised and also it's got a lot of masks and everything. You know, all the traditional restrictions that you have. And of course, the women's tennis world number one, Naomi Osaka, was actually the one who lit the Olympic cauldron to begin the games. And of course, the official opening was conducted by the Emperor of Japan, Naruhito. And so overall, this opening ceremony was a blast. It was spectacular. Although, to be honest, there's another one that I want to talk about here relating to the Olympics, is that the refugee Olympic team had a special welcome by the IOC President Thomas Bach. And he and President Bach of the IOC had these words to say. And again, I'm sort of paraphrasing here, but he said something along the lines of, you have escaped from a world of danger where you were unfairly targeted. So now we here at the IOC present you with a world to live in peace and serenity. So we welcome you warmly to the Olympic Games. And it's, again, I'm paraphrasing, but it is a very heartwarming statement that the IOC President Thomas Bach gave to the refugee Olympic team that is competing this year. They've got 29 athletes. It's great. Now, apart from everything that we've seen so far, there is one glaring difference between previous opening ceremonies and this year's one. And it's that, well, in the 68,000 capacity Japan National Stadium where the opening ceremony took place, there are only 1,000 people. And they are all scattered around as IOC officials because this Olympics was going to be held behind closed doors because of the resurgence of COVID-19 in Japan and especially in Tokyo. We don't want the Olympics from becoming a super spreader event, so no wonder this change had to be made for the first time ever. And plus, even the head of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics organizing committee, who is Toshiro Muto, if I have him right, he actually said that he didn't even rule out a last-minute cancellation of the games. Luckily, that didn't happen and the games are still going on. But even during the opening ceremony yesterday, people were still there outside the Japan National Stadium, still campaigning for the games to be canceled, even after it's already begun. And so things like this are happening. The Olympics have faced so much humps and troubles, especially caused by the COVID-19, exacerbated by it a year ago, and now it's a great thing that finally the Olympic Games are beginning. Now, several of the events are already taking place right now, relating to soccer, for example. Women's soccer is taking place. A match between New Zealand and the USA has just taken place an hour or so ago. And guess what? America won 6-1, which is pretty cool. Now, another sport that took place today is the women's weightlifting. And here's something that's quite cool. India gained a silver in the form of Saikom Chanu, I hope I have her name right, but she won the silver in the weightlifting, which is absolutely impressive, and that's really amazing for this year's Olympics. So that's pretty much the current Olympic news for you. We got another story relating to the IOC. We're going to mention that in just a moment. But first, let's talk about the 2021 NBA Finals. And so the winner of the NBA Finals this year is the Milwaukee Bucks, who won for the first time in exactly 50 years in 1971 against the Phoenix Suns. Now this right here is quite impressive, because the last time the Bucks have won was all the way back in 1971. And this was during the time when star players like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar were on the team. So, by the way, a really interesting thing is that this is the first time since 1971 that every player in the finals has never won a finals in the past. That just goes to show how good these players have become, especially because both the Bucks and the Suns have just started to become major players a couple of, not that many years ago, to be honest. Like, literally in 2019 and 20, they started to slowly rise up the ranks. In 2021, bam, they just took over everyone, surprising a lot of people. But guess what? This is what happened, and it is quite exciting for all the Milwaukee fans out there. Definitely exciting. And I mean, it's truly an amazing experience that. So the Milwaukee Bucks have won the NBA Finals this year, and the most valuable player of this tournament, the MVP for the NBA Finals this year, was the Bucks' Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is a very good player who's often nicknamed the Greek Freak by fans. And so that is the 2021 NBA Finals for you. Once again, good job, great job, and congratulations to the Milwaukee Bucks for winning the tournament. Now, the next topic I want to talk about actually relates to malware. And this is actually because back in 2010, a group of former Israeli intelligence experts founded the company NSO Group, who is a group who is based on creating cyber weapons for governments. So one of these malwares was a spyware by the name of Pegasus. Now, what Pegasus would do is you could covertly install it on phones, and then the governments can track criminals and illegal drug dealers and overall just bad actors in society, and then trace them and track them down. So this was originally made with good intentions, as long as that we've seen so far, but it's really unfortunate to see the fact that, well, according to a report made by human rights group Amnesty International, this has not been the case, and now Pegasus is being used for very nefarious reasons. It's being used to spy on just opposition leaders, and not just them, also journalists who are advocating for the freedom of speech, and even human rights activists. In what place does this happen? This is ridiculous that something like this can happen, especially in a democratic society. Like, there's a very clear difference between very dangerous terrorists who want to collapse a society and opposition leaders who are freely and legally campaigning for the office of leadership. So there's a difference between legal and illegal. And when these governments conflate them, when they remove that barrier, that's when these parties become almost autocratic in form, as they don't seem to mind the difference between just opposition leaders, journalists, and other political dissidents, and straight up violent terrorists. There's a very clear difference between these. And when these governments remove that, that is when things like this happen. And so the Pegasus has even been used against world leaders, including the leaders of France, Pakistan, South Africa, and many others. And some even say that it was used by Saudi Arabia in order to track journalist Jamal Khashoggi before his widely publicized assassination in 2018. This is a very dangerous situation, and that's going on with a lot of the elite people of the world governments, just targeting people who advocate for actual human rights, for the correct thing to do. And in order to save the civil rights, when all these governments do is just create even more loopholes and just try to make any way to simply subvert and commit basic violations of civil rights. There is no way this should have happened, but then again, this has occurred. And now investigations have sprung up everywhere to figure out who did this, who is to blame, and who is affected. And so that is what's gone on with Pegasus. So, I mean, it's very sad and unfortunate that something like this happened, but it has now, and I hope that something like this won't happen ever again. Now, the next topic I want to talk about is a lot better than the Pegasus story, and this actually refers to Mars. So, as you may know, a while ago we launched the rover Perseverance and also the Mars helicopter Ingenuity. Well, here's something that we haven't mentioned yet, and that is that back in 2018, we launched a probe, a Mars probe, by the name of InSight. Now, starting 2019, InSight began to start and find earthquakes and send the seismic data regarding the earthquake waves over to NASA here on Earth. So, this means this is the system that we use to figure out what's inside Earth. And guess what? Just over 2 years after it's been continuously sending this data to Earth, We now know exactly how Mars looks like deep inside. We figure out how the interior layering of Mars works. So although the crust of Mars is slightly thinner than expected, 24 to 72 kilometers deep, the inner core was kind of a shock to many because it was on the high end of all the estimates and way up the averages, because this means that it's roughly 1,800 kilometers is the radius of Mars's gigantic core. And so that is pretty much what Mars looks like if you cut Mars in half. That's what you would see. All the layers, now we know how thick they are. That is what Mars looks like. And we've never, actually, this is the first time we've ever done this for a planet other than our own. And so just like the same way we did it with the Earth and with the Moon, which is a moon, not a planet, we've actually done it with Mars. So it's going to be interesting to see how many others we can figure out. And that is going to be so exciting. Now the next story I want to talk about relates to Microsoft. Now you may already know that back on June 24th, Microsoft unveiled Windows 11, the next generation of the Windows operating system. Well, guess what? On July 14th, this is very interesting because Microsoft has announced another operating system by the name of Windows 365. Now, Windows 365, or Windows 365, is actually a solely cloud-based subscription service style operating system, and this is made in comparison to Windows 11 and all the other Windows systems, which generally run on physical hard drives in the computers and are more or less one-time payment system. So this right here is a very innovative version of Windows that they're going to be releasing in the couple months following, and it's going to be interesting to see what more Microsoft has added on for this version of Windows. So make sure to check it out once it comes out eventually in a couple of months alongside Windows 11. I'm pretty sure it's going to look great. Now, the next one I want to talk about here is also relating to technology. Now, as you may know, Microsoft runs the Xbox series of video game consoles. So there's another company that produces video games and has sometimes worked with Microsoft. This company is Valve, which is the famed video game company behind Half-Life and Portal and many other popular games. So after a lot of rumors of introducing a brand new portable video game console, so Valve has officially announced the Steam Deck. And the Steam Deck is actually a portable hybrid video gaming computer. Now, you might wonder, well, what's the point? Isn't a gaming computer just a normal computer but with a gigantic gigantic CPU? And you're right, most of the times it's like that. But the Steam Deck is interesting in that instead of a gigantic monitor and a keyboard and all of the stuff you'd see from like Alienware or Razer, this right here from Valve is actually just like the Nintendo Switch. You just have one portable thing. It's roughly the size of an iPad or even less, you can say. And it's just like this. And then you can just play games on there like that. It's pretty much, a lot of people have compared it to the Nintendo Switch because this is perhaps the second hybrid video game console after the Nintendo Switch, of course. So this right here, the Steam Deck, doesn't even require cartridges. You don't need a cartridge or discs, you don't need any of that to play. All you need is just a deck and a Steam account, because it automatically brings up all of the games that you have when you log into Steam. And of course, it actually uses SteamOS, which is Valve's operating system for gaming. So the Steam Deck is very popular. It was met with huge support by members of the gaming community, and it's going to be released to players worldwide eventually soon on December. It's going to be wonderful, and I cannot wait for the Steam Deck to come out. It's going to be pretty cool. Now, the next story that we have for you this week relates to, again, sports. Here comes back on the sports train. And so we begin with the fact that the winner of the most brutal and most famous cycling competition in the world, the winner of the 2021 Tour de France, or should I say Tour de France, is 22-year-old Slovenian Tadej Pogačar. So Tadej Pogačar, congratulations for winning the 2021 Tour de France for the second time in a row, because the last time he won was literally just last year. It's absolutely incredible. Now, you may know that the Tour de France is a very, very difficult and very dangerous to accomplish, but those who do complete it are quite legends in cycling. So, especially for the winner of this competition. So Tadej Pogačar has been a major competitor in the field for a little while now, and so he managed to win the Tour de France back in 2020, and so he's striked again in 2021 now, as he started gaining the lead and taking the lead over and starting in stage 5 of the tournament, and so all the way until the end, and he is won by over 5 feet from him to the second placer. So it's very obvious that Tadej Pogačar, who races for the cycling team UAE Team Emirates, it's great that that Tadej Pogačar has managed to win the Tour de France this year. So congratulations to Tadej Pogačar for winning this year's Tour de France. Now, we just have 2 more stories to take a look at, so let's begin with the Brisbane 2032 Olympics. The International Olympic Committee has announced that Brisbane will be the host of the 2032 Summer Olympics. Now, this is some very interesting news for you, because Brisbane is going to be the 3rd Australian city to host a Olympics. The 1956 one was in Melbourne, and of course the 2001, as you may well know, was in Sydney. Now, this is really exciting now, as you may already know. So this right here, Brisbane hosting the Olympics, was actually not that much of a surprise. Like, it was actually quite expected, because no one else bid for the 2032 Olympics. As it turns out, less and less cities have been campaigning to bid for the Olympics over time. So, dang. I mean, this is really weird, isn't it? So, this right now, even though it was kind of obvious that Brisbane was going to win, they still had to get the IOC voters to be convinced that Brisbane is the perfect one, the perfect city for the job of IOC and Olympics host. So, of course, Australia sent delegates to convince them that Brisbane should host the 2032 Olympics. It's quite funny, but more interestingly, the Premier of Queensland, which is the province of Australia where Brisbane is located in, her name is Anastasia Palaszczuk, and she actually mentioned that we want to prove to the world that with Brisbane 2032, that mid-sized cities can host the Olympic Games without any major problems. And sure enough, that is what Brisbane's hoping for. It's a nice inspiration to other cities to start hosting the Olympics. It's going to be pretty interesting to see what happens next. I mean, it's going to be very exciting now with the 2032 Olympics being confirmed to host in the Brisbane area in Australia. So, for example, Brisbane's cricket ground, the Gabba, is going to be redesigned and renovated overall for the Olympics, and they may as well use it as the cricket ground for the Olympics in 2032. But there's also, despite the fact that Brisbane already has, as Brisbane has said that there's already 84% of the venues have already ready for the Olympics, there's still a lot to do in the 11 years until the Olympics go on. So what they're doing here is that they're planning to build, a la Beijing, they're planning to build a brand new swimming arena, and they're also going to spend billions of Australian dollars on transport projects. So this is all for to help with the Brisbane 2032 Olympics. It's going to be pretty interesting, and yeah, it's going to be exciting, so I guess make sure to watch it when it comes like 11 years afterwards. And by that time, I'll be 23. Now, let's talk about our final story of the week, and this actually relates to Cleveland. Now, you may know that I used to live in Cleveland for a while, and I always passed by Progressive Field, which is, I believe, the baseball arena. And I always remember seeing that one gigantic, Chief Wahoo, really unrealistically smiling Native American on there, along with the name Cleveland Indians. Well, guess what? Now, as a result of the fact that there's been a gigantic controversy resulting from the death of George Floyd roughly a year ago, and this is about the inappropriate names for brands and sports teams, the Cleveland Indians have announced that they are retiring the brand name Indians and they are rebranding to the Cleveland Guardians, which I actually think is quite a better name. Now, the Chief Wahoo logo was pretty much retired back in 2018. And to be honest, the reason why is actually because of the fact that this unrealistically smiling Native American, along with the logo and the words Indians literally written there, this is quite offensive to Native Americans and American Indians, because this kind of reflects on a time when Native Americans were heavily persecuted. It's also the reason why Massachusetts is planning to change its flag, because its coat of arms, which is on the flag, has a Native American on there, and it is very much remembering the days when very, very heinous things were being committed against the Native Americans regarding the land disputes, which escalated over into major wars, some of which even practically made several tribes extinct. It was a horrible time back then, and some of it might even be happening now. We don't know, but we're still seeing more and more discoveries of the persecution that Native Americans and American Indians have faced in those times. And so the Cleveland Indians have decided to retire and remove the name Indians along with Chief Wahoo from anywhere in the Indians branding and have replaced it with the name Cleveland Guardians. And I, as a past Clevelander who is very much still a Clevelander in his heart, still very much approves of the Cleveland Guardians name change, as a new era for the Cleveland team begins. And I'm pretty sure this is very much inspired by the Washington football team in DC, which renamed from a previous very offensive name down to this, and they're planning to rebrand to something new in 2022. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the future of the Cleveland Guardians now as a new era for the baseball team begins. And I, as a past Clevelander, will be rooting for the Guardians in the baseball. And that is all of your news of the week for the week of July 18th to July 24th, 2021. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon in another News of the Week. Goodbye.